Okay, let's turn to what is going on in the Middle East, and in particular, a kind of a noteworthy moment on the podcast of comedian Theo Von. He had on Dr. Gabor Mate, who is an expert on emotional distress and trauma. And he was talking to Theo about what Palestinian children are going through and what impact that is having on them psychologically. And it really got to Theo. You saw him breaking down in real time. Let's take a listen to that.
Such terrible things as the children in Gaza are experiencing right now with the daily bombings and all this kind of stuff. What can they think? That there's something wrong with me.
Oh, imagine some kid over there in Gaza looking up and there's a bomb, they think, man, I'm so horrible, I deserve to be bombed.
Well, you know what? There was a study done of Gazan children.
Man, that's crazy. I hadn't thought about that. Like, really imagine that, though.
There was a study done of children in Palestine. Can you imagine what's going to happen to that generation?
Years from now?
Years from now. I mean, it just breaks my heart every day when I think about it.
And for any kids
I know a lot of my fellow Jews don't agree with me, but as a Jewish person, I'm not the only one who feels that way. It especially breaks my heart.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, when you put it in that sense, that imagine a kid like, because what are they going to think? They don't know. They just think, man, something's so wrong with me. I deserve to be killed.
Yeah.
Or something. I don't know.
It's just a terrible.
No, it's heartbreaking. I mean, it feels like a genocide is going on over there and you don't know what to do, it's like, I mean, you can pray, you can speak up about it. And I know that there's like a more political aspects of it. And we've had different people come on and talk about Israel and Palestine on here. And it was very knowledgeable for a lot of our listeners because you hear about it a lot, but you don't know the history and everything. But
well, I've been there. I went there 2.5 years ago to work with Palestinian women tortured in Israeli jails.
Wow.
And they had post-traumatic stress disorder. I've seen it with my own eyes.
Saagar, I honestly haven't really, watched much of Theo Von's podcast. What did you make of this moment? Because I think you're more familiar with it.
Theo is a very open-minded guy. I think he actually excels at the podcast format. And I don't think it's a surprise that Trump was the first person. He was the first person to have Trump on the big comedy podcast. Mm-hmm. And I mean, he's had Kennedy on in the past. He's had actually a lot of intellectuals. He's not a dummy in the caricature that a lot of people like to put him. Mm-hmm. He's very aware, I think, of everything that is going on. And so for him,
a lot of these comedians just play dumb.
I think they all do. Which you look, having spent some time around these folks, you cannot get up there, sell tickets to thousands of people and be stupid. It's almost impossible. Some limited cases. But they're Kevin Hart. But what we see with Theo, and specifically, he is big on addiction, and he talks a lot about that. He talked about that with Trump, and Dr. Mate also has talked quite a bit about trauma and addiction, how to get past that. So that was where a lot of the bonding happened with them. But something that Mate in particular, Dr. Mate excels at is this description of the horror of like childhood trauma and his own experiences of his mother escaping the Holocaust and how it internalized for him. And he talks a lot about parenthood. I highly recommend, if you have not listened to any episodes or really any of his discussions, books, etc., I really think you should check it out. It will help you. It really changed my perception, actually, of internalized trauma for children and how that can how that can materialize over years, even for someone like him who experienced these things when he was just a little baby. So in that context as well, I thought it was pretty powerful. I mean, for someone like Theo too, look, let's be honest, like the vast majority of Theo's audience probably codes right-wing, a lot of dudes, it's people who are young, you don't think about this type of stuff, especially in this context for a while. So for someone like Theo to break down, I mean, he even used the genocide word, right? Like, that's pretty crazy. Those two things together, that's got to have some impact, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just a basic human moment here where if your heart is at all open to what is being done to these children in particular, you can't help but be heartbroken about it. And I read an article yesterday about, we can put this up on the screen, this image, it's very hard to watch, this little girl, I don't know, maybe she's 7 years old, who is carrying her injured sister through the streets who's just, maybe a toddler, maybe a little bit older, likely orphaned. I was just saying, I was reading this article yesterday. Nobody knows how many orphans now in Gaza, but it's at least in the tens of thousands. And just imagine, her little sister is injured, and I guess she's lucky that she at least has a big sister who's there to hold her hand and try her best to care for her. Imagine that these doctors are talking about little kids in the hospital undergoing amputations with literally not a soul there to hold their hand, to comfort them, to help them get through the pain and the trauma. And I mean, it's just unimaginable what we are doing to these kids in particular in Gaza who did absolutely nothing wrong. And, I actually didn't really know that kids tend to blame themselves for whatever trauma they're experiencing, and their interpretation of the world is like, well, if this bad thing is happening to me, I must have somehow deserved it. But it's unspeakably awful to contemplate. Some of these kids have been through so much that they've literally gone mute. So they'll, arrive at the hospital. They brought to the hospital after perhaps all of their family has been killed. They're there alone. They are so traumatized that they literally lose the ability to speak. So they can't give doctors and other social workers even their name to try to find if they have any relatives who might be able to care for them. It's just, I don't know what you say about it. And this is the latest, horror that's unfolding here. We can put this up on the screen. These are people who are once again being forcibly displaced from northern Gaza. The Israelis have said effectively, if you don't leave northern Gaza, which as you can see is already basically reduced to rubble, then you will be considered a terrorist. You will be considered fair game. So, for God knows how many times these people have moved, they've been living in tents. There's little food, there's little aid, there's next to no sanitation, communicable diseases are spreading. Almost everybody in the Gaza Strip at this point is sick or injured, and yet here they are once again, trying to flee to somewhere that will be slightly safer. And as this is going on, the journalistic angle that CNN decided to take is, oh my goodness, isn't it so terrible for the IDF soldiers who are inflicting these atrocities and horrors on the Palestinian people. I literally cannot believe this article as I read it. We can put this up on the screen. Their headline is, Israeli soldiers returning from war struggle with trauma and suicide. They have a trigger warning at the beginning of this article warning readers about, if there's sensitivity because one of the individuals here pictured ends up taking his own life. Not a trigger warning because they describe how this individual and some of the others that they profile talk about running bulldozers over hundreds of Palestinians. And the take on that is not, my God, the atrocities that are being committed. The take on this is, oh, these poor IDF soldiers are coming back with PTSD. You can't even make it up. They write here, for many soldiers, the war in Gaza is a fight for Israel's survival, must be won by any means. But the battle is also taking a mental toll that, due to stigma, is largely hidden from view. Interviews with Israeli soldiers, a medic, and the family of Mizrahi, the reservist who took his own life, provide a window into the psychological burden the war is casting on Israeli society. Unbelievable. They profile one guy who, like I said, talked about how he's a vegan now because he had to run over so many hundreds of Palestinians and see their insides squirt out that he can no longer eat meat. And the person we're supposed to be sympathetic for is not the Palestinians who are being murdered, but for the soldier who's traumatized by doing the murdering. Like, what are we
Well,
doing
that was
here?
the wild part to me. I was like, okay, look, I could get, this idea of like young people sent off to war that they didn't even necessarily choose and all of that. But you're like, they're profiling PTSD about people having to run over bodies. And you're like, you don't see a little bit of you don't see the difference between this or how it would be equally applicable maybe for the people getting run over who also have to watch other people run over them. That's where it all just looks ridiculous, especially with that CNN angle. But I mean, in general, that's what the West wants to look at it, right? They would just it's very simplistic. For them, it's like, this is, Nazi Germany. So yes, it's very sad what happened to the German people, but at the end of the day, it was worth it. And that's what it all is. But the problem for them, obviously, is not only is it much more deeply complex or whatever than that, but they also refuse to see the pushback that this is leading to the U.S. itself, which we talked about yesterday with Sinwar and with how he basically is like a hero amongst a lot of people inside the Middle East now. But now, by enabling a lot of this, we have this war in Lebanon where when you start to look at the demands for what the end of that war is, you're actually looking at the same reason for why we're spending $100 billion to support Ukraine. So how does that work? We're talking about Israel basically demanding territory in Lebanon. Okay, fine. But then don't tell me that we need to support Ukraine because of an unjustified, illegal invasion, as if the UN sanctity of borders is so important for one client state, but then not for another. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And just to go back, because the CNN article really floored me.
Yeah.
Other people, I'm not the first one to say this, but imagine during World War II, a profile in Auschwitz prison guards and the trauma that they're experiencing from the horror of their job. I don't see this as any different. Sorry, I don't. One of the people they were profiling here as so traumatized was, one of the IDF soldiers posting his war crimes on TikTok for the world to see proud of what he's doing. He's proud of what he's doing there. He's posting it for the world. So I don't know. It is a sick view that you look at these kids who are orphaned, who are amputated, who will spend the rest of their life without a parent, without family, if they even escape with their life, who will deal with this trauma for the entire rest of their days. And this is the profile that you decide to write. But, to get to the larger geopolitical situation here, I could put this up on the screen. Israel has issued to the U.S. their demands for ending the war in Lebanon. Wasn't it Bill Clinton who said who's the fucking superpower here?
Yes, that's right.
Apparently Israel. Apparently we're the client state. And I'm not even joking about that, because how else can you read the situation at this point? Israel gave the U.S. a document last week with its conditions for a diplomatic solution to end the war in Lebanon. Israel's demanded its IDF forces be allowed to engage in active enforcement to make sure Hezbollah doesn't rearm and rebuild its military infrastructure close to the border. Israel also demanded its Air Force have freedom of operation in Lebanese airspace. Now, I want you to imagine, from an American perspective, let's say that Canada was some, client state of a global of China, a global superpower.
It is a client state of ours.
Right, but let's say that they were the client state of China, and they wanted the ability to have unlimited access with their Air Force to our airspace. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to be able to conduct military operations in some significant part of our country whenever and however they pleased. There is no country on earth that would accept this type of not just breach of their sovereignty, but this is an all-out assault on Lebanese sovereignty. And they've already talked about effectively annexing Lebanese land, creating this quote-unquote buffer zone. This is exactly what they were talking about with regard to Gaza. Now they're talking about just one of the coalition partners was just at a conference talking about how we need to push out all Palestinians from Gaza and just resettle all of this because, quote, the land is ours, okay? That's been the trajectory in Gaza. We also see now they're putting out these propaganda videos exactly like the ones that they used in Gaza, claiming that there's Hezbollah money underneath of a hospital in Lebanon to lay the groundwork to justifying an assault on the Lebanese health system and hospital system, just as they did in the Gaza Strip. So, needless to say, this is not a serious proposal for any sort of peace or cessation of hostilities. There is no way that anyone is going to accept these kind of conditions, which just basically are like, we want to be able to do whatever the hell we want, whatever and however we want to.
Yeah, that's basically right. All right, thank you so much for watching, guys. We appreciate you. There'll be a great Counterpoint show for everyone tomorrow. We will see you all on Thursday.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show, ad-free, and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.